but they hate each other. They have like some wild night in Vegas and they wake up the next morning married. So there's that. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Today I wanted to go through the books that I have on my summer TBR. I have some buddy reads and like some other projects that I'm working on this summer, so I don't know if I'll get to all the books that are on this list. It might be better for me to call this list like a summer hopefuls instead of like a summer TBR, because I'm hoping that I'll be able to get to these, but I don't actually know if I will be able to get to all of them. All of these books are books that are either set in the summer or involve some kind of vacation or otherwise somehow like giving summer vibes. So without further ado, we'll get right into the list. First up, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, I've never read anything by Emily Henry before, so I'm hoping that this summer will be my opportunity to dip my toes into the Emily Henry Kool-Aid. I know that this is a very beloved author, like people love her books, but the synopsis of most of her books don't really sound that interesting to me personally. But Beach Read was one of the few that actually stood out to me, where when I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, this might be pretty good. There's a pretty good chance that if you found your way to my channel, then you probably already know who Emily Henry is and you've probably heard about this book before, but just in case you haven't. This book is basically about two authors who I think both are experiencing writer's block, and they are neighbors at the beach houses, I guess, that they're staying at for the summer. The female lead character, I believe she is a romance writer, and then the male lead character, I think he's a thriller writer? Just kidding, he's a literary fiction author. But it says something in the synopsis about him like killing off his cast, which is why I thought that he was a thriller writer. It's a very thriller thing, or even fantasy thing to do, to kill off your cast, so that's where the confusion came in. But no, he's a literary fiction author. I also think it could be kind of interesting though for them to kind of switch genres, because I feel like it could be really creative and therapeutic to write something that's very outside of your comfort zone, especially when there's no real stakes involved. This could be an interesting experience to watch, like how this plays out. Next up is The Lifeguards by Amanda Ira Ward. And this is one of the books that is on my self-destruct list. I've had this book for a couple of years now, and every summer I say that I'm gonna read it, and then I never do. And so I put it on my self-destruct list to make sure that I read it this year, or otherwise I have to unhaul it without having read it. But this book basically follows a bunch of like wealthy, I don't know if they're housewives, but it's like this group of moms, and I believe their sons are lifeguards for the summer, hence the title. And they come home with like some kind of secret that's like, you know, something bad happened. I'm assuming that somebody probably died or something, but it's like, did they kill the person, or like what happened? I kind of got the vibes that this is going to be similar to like Big Little Lies or something along those lines, where you kind of start off with like whatever the incident is, but like you don't know who is the person that died or who was the person this incident happened to, and you kind of like you go back to the beginning, kind of work your way up to the incident to see all the things that led up to it happening. So I enjoy reading stories about like rich people, like crazy things happening to rich people, so very interested to see how this is going to turn out. I'm very excited. I haven't heard the best reviews, I will be honest, so I don't have my expectations too high, but I am looking forward to finally getting around to reading this summer. This book has been on my TBR for so long that even if I don't enjoy it, I'll still be happy just knowing that I finally read it. Next up is This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. Now, I read, what was it called? Every Summer After. I read that last summer, and I read it for a project where I compared Every Summer After to Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, because I was told that those books were like super similar. So then a whole reading vlog where I read both of those books and like compared and contrasted them. So I'll have that link down below in the description and in the cards in case you want to check that out. But when the second book of hers came out, which I don't even remember what it's called, it basically got dragged. Like, people did not like that book, and so I therefore had no motivation to pick the book up and read it, and so I never did. But then this one came out, and I haven't heard too many negative reviews yet, so I do have it on my TBR. I am kind of interested. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is some kind of like, I think it's like best friend's brother or something, where like her and obviously her best friend's brother have some kind of relationship or something going on. But it's like, oh no, I can't be with him, you're my best friend's little brother. And then I think the best friend ends up getting married and having like a destination wedding or something on an island. And so obviously the brother is going to be there because his sister's getting married. And obviously the main character, you know, it's her best friend, so she's probably, my guess is she's going to be the maid of honor. So they're going to have to be, you know, close proximity or forced proximity. So yeah, we'll see how that all pans out. That's pretty much all I know about the book. From what I've heard, the book is not great, but I heard it's very atmospheric, which If I'm looking for a book that I just want to like pick up that's low stakes that I don't have to use a ton of brain power for, I feel like this would be a good book to pick up this summer. I'll definitely be keeping my eye out, you know, on how the reviews for this book continue to progress across the summer. But yeah, for now it's on my TBR, and I'm interested to see if I'm gonna like this one from Carly Fortune. Next up is actually another Emily Henry book, and that is Funny Story. I believe this is her most recent release. Also, the synopsis is a little bit confusing. Like, it took me, I had to read through it a couple of times before I actually understood like what was going on. So if I remember correctly, I think the female lead character gets dumped by her fiance, and then he like runs off into the sunset with like his childhood best friend or something, who also was in a relationship prior to that happening, and she dumped her fiance. And so both of the dumpees are our main leads, and they end up becoming roommates. Hopefully that made sense. And I think with them being roommates, I think they also get into some like fake dating, which I love me a good fake dating story. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic how the whole thing is set up. So I think this could be juicy and entertaining, but also I'm interested to see like what Emily Henry does with this, because it's very messy. Like I said, I've never read an Emily Henry book, and now I have 2 of her books on my TBR for the summer, so very excited to see whether or not I'm going to like this author or not. Next is the Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, another author who I have never read anything by. And I don't know that this book has anything to do with the summer. I don't know if it's set in the summer or anything, but it came out recently, and I feel like unless a rom-com is specifically set in like the fall or winter or something, you can't really go wrong with a rom-com in the summer. I think the female lead is some type of writer, but she's kind of like unknown and obscure or something. And then the male lead character, he is like a screenplay writer, and so he wrote this screenplay that she somehow got the opportunity to like critique or edit or rewrite or something. And so that's kind of where they meet, is because she's going to be doing something with a screenplay that he wrote. Then he's of course the grumpy one, and my understanding from the synopsis is that like he only wrote this screenplay because he wanted to use it as an opportunity, I guess, to get his foot in the door so that he could actually pitch a different screenplay or something like that. Apparently like his screenplay that he wrote isn't really good, but he doesn't really care because that's not really why he's doing this. And so in the meantime, she has to be the one to kind of clean up his messy screenplay that kind of sucks. And I guess from there, some kind of way, there's a romance that ensues. Some kind of grumpy sunshine romance. Again, like I said, I've never read anything from Catherine Center, but I know that people really liked The Bodyguard by her. She has a pretty decent reputation, I would say. So hopefully this author is a hit and this book is a hit for me, but we'll see. Next up is The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Based on the synopsis, have no idea if this book has anything to do with the summer, but the cover is super like vacation, tropical, summery vibes. So again, it's on this list for that reason. I think from the synopsis, this book is about this couple who got married in college because the girl wanted to get like subsidized housing or something like that. In my mind, the first thing I thought of was like Corey and Topanga, how they like lived together on, they had like a little apartment on campus or whatever. But I think they got married in college so that she can get subsidized housing, and then they got divorced, or they thought they got divorced, but maybe for whatever reason it didn't go through or something, I don't really know. And so now it's like 3 years later, and the guy, you know, they've moved on, they've gone their separate ways, and the guy is trying to get his inheritance or something. But the only way that he can get his inheritance is if he has been married for 5 years. So that's kind of how they come back into each other's lives, because I guess maybe they found out that they were never actually divorced, so they've been married this entire time or something. So then there's like some fake dating or whatever, I don't really know. Don't really understand. It was a little bit confusing trying to understand the synopsis, but sounds to me like it's like a second chance romance, but also like kind of sort of fake dating. Whatever. I've read Christina Lauren books before and I've enjoyed the ones that I've read, so I think that this is going to be a good time. I have expectations that it's going to be a good time, that it's going to be fun and funny, so fingers crossed that they don't disappoint me. Next up we have The Rule Book by Sarah Adams. Yes, another Sarah Adams book. If I do read this book, this will be the 3rd Sarah Adams book that I've read this year, which is the most that I've read from a single author this year. What I didn't know is that this was part of like the cheat sheet series. That I did not know until like 5 minutes ago when I looked up the book to like skim the synopsis. I don't know if the female lead Nora is in the first book. If she is, I have absolutely no memory of her. I don't know what she did or who she was, but the male lead character Derek is one of the teammates on Nathan's like football team from the first book. So we met Derek in the first book. He was really funny. He's one of the funny, you know, teammates that like was helping Nathan put together his little cheat sheet. So we love Derek. He's great. Basically, Nora and Derek, I think, dated when they were in college. and apparently their breakup was not a pretty one because they basically hate each other. But now Derek is in the NFL, which we already knew from the first book, and Nora is a sports agent. And some kind of way, I think that she's trying to like become his agent, even though she doesn't really like him. Like she can separate her hate of him from like business. So she wants to be his agent, but they hate each other. They have like some wild night in Vegas, and they wake up the next morning married. So there's that. So it's enemies to lovers, but it's also kind of like second chance romance. It sounds very chaotic, and I am very much looking forward to it. Next is The Resort by Sarah xoxo. I don't really know how you say this person's last name. Never heard of this author before, but the synopsis of this book really like sucked me in. It's almost scary how good the synopsis is, because sometimes when you read a really good synopsis, the expectations, you know, get set pretty high, and then you read the book and you're very much disappointed because after reading the synopsis, like you had all these ideas of like what was gonna happen, you had like your expectations super high, and then you read it and you're just like, oh. So I'm not gonna read the whole synopsis, but I will kind of just touch on some of the parts that like really stood out to me. A searing vacation thriller set on a remote island in Thailand. I forget the main character's name. I think her name might be like Cassie or something, but the synopsis says something like when she sets foot on the island, she's there to escape something from her past. But this island is so like beautiful and pretty that it's like the perfect place to hide. And it's like this party island. And there's a show on Netflix, I think it was called like Eden or something. And like that's what this synopsis kind of reminded me of, if you've ever seen that show. But it's like years later, and there's like, I think she's like a diving instructor, and like one of the diving students turns up dead. And apparently this isn't the first death or murder or something that's happened on the island, and it won't be the last. So even though the main character has been on this island hiding, there's someone there who knows who she is, and they are there to make sure that justice is served. But just based on that little bit of information about the book, I am immediately intrigued. I am praying to the book gods, please don't let this book suck. Next we have The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, and this is another book that I've had on my shelf for a while now. And just for no reason other than the fact that I tend to overestimate how long the summer is, and so I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read this in the summertime, and then the next thing you know, the summer is over and I haven't read it. So I'm making this, just like the lifeguards, a priority this summer to make sure that I get them read, because they have been on my shelf for so long. Like, it's one thing to have it on your TBR, like your hypothetical TBR, but for you to physically have it on your shelf, it's like, no, I need to get these books read. So The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, from what I read in the synopsis, I think this is about some girl who is like dating this guy. They like go to a baseball game or something, and the guy that she's dating like proposes to her in front of like thousands of people. And apparently they haven't been dating that long, or they're not really that close. Like, she was very like taken aback by the proposal, and so she rejects it, which then the spotlight's on her, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, how could you turn down this proposal? Like, this man proposed to you at a baseball game, like, and I think he's like a famous actor or something like that. She's basically being given a really hard time because she publicly turned down this like famous actor, and so people are obviously like shaming her and like angry at her. Like, obviously all of his fans like hate her, whatever. She is the source of public ridicule right now. But thankfully, you know, there is this other guy who just so happens to be witnessing the whole thing, Carlos. He comes to the rescue and like, you know, rescues her from like the camera crews and stuff like that. And then from there, they kind of hit it off and they start dating. And it's supposed to be, I think, just kind of like a, you know, summer fling, like something that's just for fun, nothing too serious. But I guess maybe over time it becomes more serious. Last but not least, we have Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies. And this is by Catherine Mack, another author that I have never heard of before. I know absolutely nothing really about what this book has to do with, like what it's about. But the title alone, like, tell me that with a title like that, you're not putting this on your TBR. This is like top tier summer TBR material. Something about a mystery author on a book tour, a con artist, and like the events in the book that she wrote like coming to life or something. Or the events in the book like happening in real life, something like that. And honestly, I don't even want to know anything about this book. I want to go into it blind because I think that's going to make it so much more fun. Just the first sentence of the synopsis will get you. 10 days, 8 suspects, 6 cities, 5 authors, 3 bodies, and 1 trip to die for. sold. And there you have it. Those are all of the books that are on my summer TBR for this year. Whether or not I actually stick to this TBR is TBD. If you made it this far into the video, drop the beach umbrella down below in the comments. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. That would help me out so much. And of course, subscribe if you are not already subscribed. As always, my socials and links will be down below in the description. And I will see you guys somewhere else on the interwebs. Bye.